Welcome to the Arkansas Food, Farms, and Forests podcast, the podcast bringing you the latest on food, fiber, and forestry research from the Arkansas Agricultural Experiment Station, the research arm of the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture.
Welcome to the Food, Farms, and Forests podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Fouch. Today we are learning about a new tool that aims to save farmers money and help the environment by providing consistent soil fertilizing recommendations across state lines. FRST, or FIRST, stands for Fertilizer Recommendation Support Tool. It's a free, web-based national soil fertility database for farmers and soil consultants. Joining us to talk about FIRST is Nathan Slaton, who was the principal investigator on this national project. He's the assistant director of the Arkansas Agricultural Experiment Station and professor in the Crop, Soil, and Environmental Sciences Department. Nathan, thanks for being here with us.
My pleasure.
We appreciate you making the time to talk to us about this. This is a big deal because this was a national project, years in the making, and now the website is up and running. People are using it. What is the latest update on FIRST?
Well, the latest update is that our decision support tool went live at the beginning of April, and that was after probably 4 to 6 months of troubleshooting. It was on the web and people could find it at that time, but we weren't, actively asking people to find it other than some beta testers. So anyway, we got all that lined out, and early April, it went live, and basically the tool accesses a database that we have been putting together for about 5 years, and currently that database has information from about 2,500 research trials that have been conducted across about 40 states and on over 20 crops.
So it's only been live for about a month or so.
Correct, and it is really just the first step of what we're looking to do.
Okay, so first let's take a few steps back and start with the basics. First, what is a fertilizer decision aid?
Soil testing has been a discipline for about 100 years, and it came about from post-World War II, really, when farmers, were seeking help in what fertilizers to apply. So it is standard practice now for farmers before they plant a crop to get a soil test. And what we have, noticed, and not just recently, but this has been a problem for years, is that states, that basically share the same weather patterns, the same soils, the same production systems, often have different fertilizer recommendations, and that's even if they're using the same soil test methods. So when, for example, a farmer that may farm near or on the border of two states, literally he could have different regulations and or fertilizer recommendations coming from the land grant institutions for fields depending on which side of the state they're on. So this tool, and that's just one example, because there's also private soil test labs out there that have their own fertilizer recommendations. So this tool is really just a resource for farmers, consultants, industry, anybody to use to be able to look at their crop, their soil test information, and see what the data supports in regards to a fertilizer cutoff. Just like anything, whether it's sports and coaching, everybody kind of has their own philosophy of how to fertilize a crop.
Sure.
And a lot of those philosophical differences have been incorporated into fertilizer recommendations at different labs, regardless, again, of whether it's a private lab or a public institution lab. And what the tool does is it basically takes the information from the field trials. It's all in a database, And it is, other than the implicit biases that modeling, certainly possesses, it takes away, the Nathan Slaton philosophy of this is the way you need to fertilize, which may be different than, doctor or somebody else at a neighboring state that has a slightly different philosophy or thought process on how to fertilize crops and manage soil fertility.
So let's talk about how it works. You go on the website, you put that information in there, and you use this resource. Can you kind of walk us through what does that look like? What information is it asking you, and what the website shows you?
Yeah, so like I say, this is the first phase of the tool, and right now it helps us with what we call soil test correlation, which really identifies the critical soil test value, which is defined as the soil test value above which a significant yield response to fertilization with that nutrient will not occur. So the tool has several filters on it. Those filters allow the end user to identify the nutrient, and right now the nutrients that are in the tool are phosphorus and potassium. It also allows the user to select an individual crop, corn, soybeans, rice, etc. And then as you continue to narrow down, the nutrient, the crop, it will also allow you to select from the database the soil depth that was sampled, and then eventually you get down to selecting the soil test method that was used, because soil test methods are they vary from one lab and typically from one state to the next, and they can significantly influence the quote soil test values that are generated. So once you make all those selections, the soil test method is the last one. And once you select the soil test method, it will show you how many observations there are in the database for that information, apply a model to it, and eventually show the data with a model overlaying on it, along with information about the magnitude of yield from that data, and it will also show you the individual site years of data. Really, the intention at this point is that they would have their soil test recommendation from their lab using the same soil test method. They can look at their fertilizer, whether or not they get a recommendation to apply fertilizer, and they would be able to run this tool to see whether they should expect a yield increase from fertilization. That doesn't mean that fertilizer should not necessarily be applied, because many farmers, it's just like filling up your gas tank, right? You don't necessarily wait until your car stops before you put fuel in it. It's the same way with fertility. Some philosophies, if you will, are that when we remove a nutrient with a harvested crop, that we're going to put some of that nutrient back as well.
And the tool is available for 40 states and Puerto Rico right now, is that correct?
Well, the tool technically is available for all states. It's just the data that we currently have in the tool is coming from 40 states and over 20 crops. When you first pull up the tool, there will be a map of the United States and the territories that shows up. And anywhere there is a green blotch, at least I think it's green because I'm red-green colorblind, wherever there is a green blotch means that county has data in the national database. And as you select nutrient, crop, only the counties that have data will remain highlighted. So, you will be able to literally see where in the United States the research has been conducted and archived into the database as you use the tool. And just as a side note, that's another fantastic feature of this tool, is that it allows us to see where the research has been conducted and where we really need to put more effort into soil test correlation research.
Yeah, you're correct. It is green, and there are green dots. I've played with the map, and it is very interesting as you're selecting the different options. The little dots will pop up or not. So it is very user-friendly, very interesting tool. And you mentioned a little bit of this, but I want to dive deeper into the benefits of having this information and having this database available for farmers, for soil scientists, and then the environment overall.
So I guess the first thing I would say is that soil testing, it's a great tool, but it's in many respects misunderstood. Many farmers and consultants have realized this across time because at least when I first came into this position more than 20 years ago, it was not uncommon for somebody to take a soil sample, mix it up good, send part of it to the University of Arkansas, and send the other portion to a private lab that was in Memphis. And at the time, we didn't even use the same exact soil test methods and units. So when they got the results, even though it was the same soil sample, the information was different. That is the first benefit, is it allows the farmer to see how the information is interpreted very uniformly, again, without professional bias or judgment.
And then for soil scientists, you talked about how even looking at the map, now scientists can look at it and see, okay, we have information for these states, for these areas. We need to do more research on these crops or this region. Talk to me about how that's beneficial to scientists and the information that you are gathering and the information you're realizing that you still need.
Yeah, so again, we have a little over 2,500 trials in the database. Probably 2,000 of those are for corn and soybean. Not surprising, simply because they dominate the landscape in regards to row crop fertilization. There's not another crop in the database that has over 100 observations. So Bermuda grass forage, cotton, rice, I think are between 50 and 100 observations. And then, we start getting down to less than 50. For many of our minor crops, we are still trying to collect data from what we call legacy data, information that has been published or researched in prior years. That has been difficult simply because that data could be in file cabinets. It could be on somebody's computer drive, and getting that information, and as well as all of the metadata that is associated with it that is really important, has been difficult. Probably, again, 50% or more of the data is more than 20 years old. So older production systems, older cultivars, we are encouraging the soil fertility community of scientists across the United States, as they conduct trials, to provide that information to us with what we call a minimum data set. And that minimum data set's really important because classical soil fertility has focused on soil test phosphorus alone for predicting whether or not we need phosphorus fertilizer. And we know from much smaller studies that, if we take into account soil pH, soil texture, perhaps even other nutrients in the soil, that we could become more accurate with our recommendations. The problem is, as you add other covariates, if you will, to data analysis, you need more and more observations. So that's why putting this database, as well as all of the other associated metadata with it, is really important. And it goes beyond, what we're currently doing, that would require more complex models and information, but it would provide more accurate recommendations in the end.
Very good. And what about the bigger picture? How could this potentially benefit the environment? How does that translate on a bigger scale?
One of the major problems from an environmental standpoint is putting nutrients out where they don't belong. So if we can, think back to the 4R mentality, right nutrients, right source, right place, figuring out whether or not the crop is going to respond to fertilization is extremely important for responsible nutrient management.
And how did this project come about? You were the principal investigator on this portion of the national project. How did Arkansas come to play a significant role in this national project?
Well, this really the roots of this, date back 50 years again to scientists coming together in what we call regional soil test groups. There's one in the Northeast, one in the South, one in the Midwest that's called the North Central Group, and one in the West. So we've known for years that our fertilizer recommendations from one state to the other, vary. That's kind of been the elephant in the room that nobody has really wanted to talk about because we are all, kind of encapsulated in our state boundaries. And we work, for the University of Arkansas or Mississippi State University. Certainly we recognize that there is the need for more collaborative work and that we can, if we join forces, we can do more with what everybody has. So part of this project really got sprouted legs about 10 years ago when a scientist who was at that time with Purdue basically came to a national meeting and was like, why do recommendations change when you cross that little sign on the interstate that says welcome to Arkansas or Oklahoma? It doesn't need to be that way. It took about another 5 years for a group of us in the South to really digest that information and come together, and we started comparing our recommendations that are supposed to be, land grant institution, the latest and the greatest, and we saw that for the same soil test method, the same crop, huge differences in the amount of fertilizer and where we were starting and stopping fertilization. So that was 2017 in Athens, Georgia. With the leadership of Deanna Osman, who was at the North Carolina State University, we came together as a group and we found some funding from Pete Kleineman and USDA ARS to kind of get us started. Then we got Deanna got a grant from USDA NRCS that allowed us to start developing the database and to start thinking about what our vision would look like in a program. And more recently, that initial project ended and another project from USDA NRCS started in August of 2023, and that is the one that here at the University of Arkansas that we are leading. But this is a national effort. We have scientists from really 45 states that are participating either in a committee or have co-authored presentations or co-authored papers working together in this project.
And the project was made possible by those grants. Can you clarify for us the USDA, the NRCS is the Natural Resources
Conservation Service.
Conservation
Correct.
Services. And the other one was ACR?
USDA ARS or
ARS.
Agricultural Research Service.
Okay, great. Anything else you'd like to mention that maybe I didn't ask?
Well, I would like to mention that, we are trying to certainly involve industry. You don't have to be, a federal USDA worker or a land grant university scientist to join. We have certainly encouraged staff from private labs to join. And, we're trying to bring them into this project because we know within the U.S., Arkansas and North Carolina State have large public soil testing programs, but other states don't have the funding that we have. So most of the soil samples and fertilizer recommendations are coming from private labs. So that's the first thing I would say, is that we want participation from farmers, consultants, and the broader industry. The second thing I would say is that we have had industry participation. OCP North America is a phosphorus manufacturer, and they have actually funded research with scientists across the United States. And one of the requirements of that funding was that they would provide the results and the soil test information to the FRST project to go into our database. And that has been really a huge step forward to encourage our scientists to provide up-to-date, current soil test correlation information.
And what is it like for you to see this project come to fruition, to see the website up and running, the first of its kind, and see it come to fruition?
It's very exciting. Soil fertility is something I've been passionate about for my career. I'm kind of in the last 5-10 years, I don't know what the number is, of my career. So it's great for me to be able to take the data that I've collected and try to get it in the tool to make sure that it lives beyond my career. The other thing that is really neat is the fact that folks that don't have hair like me, or have gray hair and are at the end of their career, it allows us the opportunity to mentor some much younger scientists. And that is greatly needed across the U.S. simply because there's fewer scientists today than what there were 20 or 40 years ago. So one of the other problems that this project addresses is that we are not really good data managers as scientists sometimes. So making sure that all of the data is archived allows the next generation of scientists to come in, and when they are challenged about a recommendation, instead of saying, I don't know where that data is or what was used to develop our recommendations, hopefully we have done a really good job of finding that information, getting it into our archived, published database so that they can know, or at least have information to develop and support their recommendations.
I can only imagine what it's like to be part of something so big like this.
Yes, it's a good end of career capstone.
Yeah, for sure. The cherry on top. And to learn more, use this tool, find more information. It is soiltestfrst.org is that website. Again, that's soiltestfrst.org. Nathan, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me today. It's been great to talk about this project.
That was Nathan Slaton, Assistant Director of the Arkansas Agricultural Experiment Station and Professor in the Crop, Soil, and Environmental Science Department. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Food, Farms, and Forests. I'm Jennifer Fouch. Don't forget to subscribe.
The Arkansas Food, Farms, and Forests podcast is produced by the Arkansas Agricultural Experiment Station, the research arm of the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture. Visit aaes.uada.edu for more information.